discussion that I was having with Chris Moulay that was one, it was hard to convince, we're the sole folklorists in our organizations, so sometimes that's a little lonely. We love our coworkers, but they don't always know what we do. And that sometimes it's hard to get our EVs to fund us to come to AFS because it's been largely academic. And I thought, well, we should be able to solve this problem by proposing some professional development ideas. And one of the main ones we had was funding, especially as, during these times when we sort of fear, I mean, although it looks like the NE and the NEH are safe, but, more competition. If you heard Cliff last night, there's more competition. So we need to start looking more broadly for funding opportunities, and sometimes it's very difficult. And it's a different type of relationship when we're applying the NE or the NEH. We know that every year the panel changes. But one thing is when you're working with non-government groups, it's usually the same people making the decisions every year, so you really have to develop those relationships. So we came up with this idea. I worked with Jessica, who's new ED for AFS, with Ellen, and with Robert Barron to put this panel together. And so it was actually quite fun and quite interesting to find people, especially when you're working from so far away. But luckily, actually, I brought a homegrown person up here. So what I'm going to do is have them introduce themselves and a little bit about their organizations. And one thing I did in preparation is I sent them all a survey, and I want to say 5 out of 5 responded to the survey. So I'm feeling very happy with that. Where I asked them to define, without looking it up, to define folklore, and best practices and worst practices is sort of a way to begin. And then I just asked 3 members of our studio audience, all the way to the front, Broadway.
Church? Can't sit in the back?
Not church and not classroom. And then I asked 3 members of our studio audience to give definitions. I'm going to read them without identifying, just as a way to show, where our panel is coming from and where we're coming from, and the discussion for us being how do we meet in the middle. And the other thing I was thinking about is, folklorists, we're really good at relationships. That's our bread and butter, is how to create relationships and maintain them. But we don't always know the rules of engagement. And so part of this panel here is to help us learn the rules for creating and maintaining those relationships. So I don't know whether you want to, we'll start next to me and work our.
I'm Kate Zaleski. I work for Health Now New York, which is the parent company for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York here in Buffalo, and Blue Shield of Northeastern New York in the Albany capital region of New York State. I'm coming here from the corporate donor side, which is a little bit different than a foundation, and I'm happy to kind of talk about some of the differences with the other ladies here on the panel. We give primarily, it's interesting, we give primarily in the areas as you would expect in health, but we define health in many ways, and that's how we kind of form relationships with those in the cultural sector, in addition to those nonprofits who are focusing specifically on health and disease states.
I'm Kathy Gura. I'm president of the Children's Guild Foundation. Our foundation has been in Western New York for 108 years, so we've been around a long time, and our focus has been the same over that 108 years, which is children with special needs. And as such, we fund, even though we're very focused that it's around that demographic of children and young adults, we fund in healthcare and we fund in education. We fund in research, but we also fund in therapeutic recreation, which tends to be, we have more quantity-wise grants for therapeutic recreation, and within that falls the arts. So we have funded many arts and education type programming, including folklore, a couple of times. But you probably will be able to tell me more than I will be able to tell you. So that's kind of, we're an independent private foundation. So we do fund in a very different way than the corporations do, though we all kind of work together, I would say. So our board is made up of community members that are fiduciaries and stewards of the endowment that we do.
How do you define special needs?
Special needs, we define it as developmental mental health, behavioral, obviously physical disabilities. So pretty much the gamut. The only thing that doesn't fall in, if you looked up the definition for special needs overall, it would include economically disadvantaged. That is not a focus for us, though many of the children and families fall into that. But whether they have $1 or $1,000,000, that's not one of the criteria that we look at.
Good morning. My name is Paula Miller. I am the Executive Director of the William G. Pomeroy Foundation. We are a family foundation, a private grant-making foundation. We were established in 2005 by, of course, Bill Pomeroy. He owned 2 technology companies in Syracuse, New York, and that is how he gained his wealth. He is the sole donor to the foundation. On the board, or we have trustees, it's myself, his wife, and recently his daughter Darren has moved back from Arlington, Virginia to join the foundation, so we're thrilled about that. We have 2 main areas of interest. One is to help people celebrate and preserve their community's history, and we do that for the most part through historic signage. Bill Pomeroy is a history buff, and so we fund. In New York State, we don't have a state program for historic roadside markers, so we have taken that program over for the state of New York. And we've done over 500 signs so far. We're expanding to some national programs for women's suffrage for 2020. We're doing 250 markers across the state of New York. But what we found in our experience with historic markers is that our communities have some really unique, fascinating stories that they wanted to share that don't fit into a historical marker. So we established a program called Legends and Lore, and we partnered with the New York Folklore Society, with Ellen. Ellen plays a very significant role in what we do because we aren't folklorists, and so the New York Folklore Society vets our applications for us so that it is legitimate folklore that we're commemorating on these signs. And we're ready to launch that program national as well, which is why we're here at this conference. We're also exhibiting. We're looking for partners like the New York Folklore Society so that we can bring this program to other states. Our other area of funding is related to blood cancer. Bill Pomeroy was diagnosed with leukemia in 2004. He needed a bone marrow transplant. He needed someone that was a match for him. Thankfully, there was someone on the registry. He had a bone marrow transplant. He's doing wonderful. So we also do bone marrow drives as well. We've registered 26,000 people, and we've had 75 donor-patient matches that have signed up at one of our drives and gone on to save someone's life. So that's our tagline: for history, for life. So our funding is it's interesting because it's very it's personal to to Bill Pomeroy and his experience.
I'm Kristen McPeak. I'm with the Community Foundations of the Hudson Valley. We cover a 3-county region of Dutchess, Putnam, and Ulster County. If you're familiar with community foundations, there are about 750 of them nationally, so there's probably one in your community, certainly your state, city, county. So community foundations are made up of charitable funds from individuals, families, nonprofits, corporations, and we manage those funds. Our primary focus is on building endowments, so we can continue to fund programs in perpetuity. So the Community Foundations itself does some fundraising to do local grant making and scholarships, and then the rest of our funds are made up of funds from those individuals, corporations, families, and nonprofits. So most of our funding is restricted through competitive processes or through what our donors like to do with that. So a big part of what we do is work with our nonprofits to connect them with those donors, and then also through our competitive grant programs, which is how I got to know Eleanor, because we happen to have a couple arts programs that are a great fit for folklore.
And they've been very generous.
Yes, because it's donor directed, our grant making really changes from time to time. We kind of have our core programs, but you just kind of never know when a new fund may come in, or we may receive a bequest that turns into some more funding streams.
So I can say it's really worthwhile. I met Chrissy because we applied through the competitive process, but then we met and talked, and she came to the office. So So now she sort of has her ear and eye out for other funding, and actually did find some very generous funding for one of my key programs, a Latino study at Kingston, New York. So it's even if there's nothing in their competitive process, it's worthwhile to contact your community foundation
Yeah, I
and
mean,
just let them know.
Right, because I mean, we promote so much of our competitive processes, but it's actually such a small fraction of what we give out in grants each year. I think about 40% of our funds are donor advised, which means they're being advised by someone who they may know what they want to do with those funds, but they may be looking for, for a program just like that. So we spend a lot of time kind of building our relationships with nonprofits, with those donors, and really trying to build that bridge and make those connections wherever we can.
My name is Maureen Hurley, and I'm the newest member of the Oshai Foundation board. That's why I'm the only one that has notes up here. I've been to one board meeting, but I was very familiar with the Oshai Foundation in my career here. I just retired after 31 years with a local privately held company who had a family foundation. And so when we were trying to figure out some things, it was always like, well, go ask Oshai, go ask Oshai, go ask Oshai. Program managers, some of the local folks know, are very, very knowledgeable folks. Anyway, the Oshai Foundation was started by John R. Oshai in 1941. He was the founder of Tyco Products, which are windshield wipers. So anytime it starts raining, at least for me, I think of John Oshai. And actually, the story, which some of you may have heard, he was actually involved in an auto accident in 1916 where he hit somebody on a bicycle because there was nothing, cleaning off the rain on his windshield, and that's what inspired him to actually invent and develop a whole line of windshield wipers. Anyway, be that as it may, he actually led the foundation. He started in 1941. He actually led the foundation until his death in 1998. In 1942, at year-end 1942, the assets totaled just over $3,000. And today, at the end of 17, our assets totaled nearly $290 million. So we're among the largest foundations here in Buffalo. There's 5 areas of focus, which we can get into a little bit later, but one in particular I think would be of interest to this group, and it's basically arts and culture, around expanding the role of arts, culture, and heritage in regional development, and essentially using the arts as a way to attack some of the other things that are meaningful to us around education, self-sufficiency, livable, stable neighborhoods, and improving health and systems of care. So Oshai has been involved in using arts in different forms in order to improve on some of the other areas of focus for us. So before I joined the board, when I interacted with Oshai more as a potential grantee or just to even gathering information, one of the things that they really stood for was collaboration. They're very much involved in bringing organizations together and potentially funding organizations that will come together for common purposes. And one of the program people that have been there for 20 plus years knows every not-for-profit in this community and has a point of view around which of them should be working together and is not afraid to advise as such, as we were commenting earlier. What I didn't know before I joined the board is that Oshai actually has a whole arm around helping build capacity for not-for-profits. They have one full-time person and then lots of service that they'll provide to help not-for-profits, for example, create strategic plans, in some cases for the first time, help them figure out what they need in a leader, help them figure out how they might collaborate with others in the community. So there's a whole arm that's involved in really trying to stabilize and enrich the existing not-for-profit community in the community. So anyway, so I'm thrilled and flattered to be part of it, but as I said, being a newbie, this was my orientation, I think. They wanted to make sure that I knew what real stuff. Anyway, so yeah, happy to answer questions as we get into it.
Great. So I'm going to read out the definitions of folklore that I gathered from the panel, and I don't know who wrote what, and this is so we can start to meet in the middle. So one came in the other day, so it's on my phone. Histories and traditions within a culture. Stories, customs, and traditions unique to a community being passed from generation to generation. Stories that can bring important parts of history to life that pass on traditions or customs of people from all parts of the world. Folklore, an oral process by which life stories are handed down, communicated stories of the quote, the stories of the people, end quote, but those stories can be told orally through music, art, food, and other customs. Actually, not bad definitions. And we may not be as far apart as you think. Folklore, keeping the history of ordinary people's ordinary activities alive. Folklore is shared knowledge that reflects a community's heritage. And folklore is the exploration of creativity in everyday life. It is the everyday, the nuance, and the stuff that holds us together. So with that, I don't know if people want to start asking questions or. Yeah.
Question. If it's really elementary, but so some of you are from corporate foundations, some are from family foundations. Can we maybe just get a rundown of what is the main difference between the different kinds of foundations?
Yeah, sure. So I come from a corporation, and there's a few things that are different, and I'll let those who are from true foundations speak about. There are some like legalities about being a foundation, and there are some rules about how much you have to disperse in an annual year. The money that we contribute to the communities comes entirely from, honestly, it's something we take very seriously. The way we're able to contribute to our community is because of the premiums our members pay us. We're actually a not-for-profit community-based health plan, which means that 90% of every dollar we spend has to be paid towards claims of our members. We're a health insurance company. But we do have a limited amount of money and reserves that we pour back into the communities we serve, because a healthier community means healthier employers and healthier, like better hospital systems, and so the rising tide lifts all ships. So corporate dollars are determined by a committee within our corporate relations department with very heavy input from our officer and executive team. Our board, we do have a board, but if the board does not make decisions on how the funds are spent, the board simply makes decisions on how much budget we have every year. So the budget varies every year. And we have to be very careful and specific that we are stewarding the dollars we have and doing right by our members. And so that's why we spend the majority of our money on health states, especially those that impact our members the most. There are certain cultural institutions that are part of the communities we serve, and I'll speak specifically here in Buffalo. There are long-standing, like the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, the Albright Knox Art Gallery. They contribute to the cultural health of our community, which we think that is very important, and that is why we have relationships with some cultural institutions. So that's really more on the corporate side of things.
For a private foundation, the legality side of it, as she said, we have a minimum that has to be distributed. So 5% of your endowment has to be spent annually on programs. So that kind of formulates our budgets as to what we give away every year. From there, I think a family foundation, a private foundation, little different. They because of the focus. Ours being an independent one, we do not, our endowment, our money is not made up of one person's wealth. And so in that case, we have a board of directors of 12 people from the community who have an interest in our focus area, which is children, and specifically children who are differently able. And so these people come together, they're the stewards. They decide where this money is going to be spent. We don't have, we have our focus areas and we have our initiatives, because we also do a large amount of advocacy, but not lobbying advocacy. We really we try to, as Maureen said, work with the nonprofits, mentoring them, helping them, connecting them with others in the community, finding board members for them. I mean, it can run the gambit on that. Just kind of a place where they can come for advice and assistance. We do a tremendous amount of that. We also obviously give away a lot of grant money. And so we have an online application, which almost everybody does now. It's very rare to find a foundation that doesn't. It has, I think, revolutionized. I think it's made things a lot easier. And it also has put, I think, things on a more level playing ground, because most of the applications are dropped down. And so, you really don't have to be, someone who's been trained in grant writing for 20 years and, write a good grant. It's pretty much equalized. those come in and we look at those, but a lot of times we'll go out and talk to people because we're truly, as the name of this is, about relationships. We invest, so we kind of look at it the similar as what we're doing with, our endowment. We invest in our endowment, and we learn and research, decide where to invest the money. We do that because we're investing in people, and really not even the program. We're investing in the people that do the program, and so building that relationship. I spend most of my time meeting with people, talking with people before we even get to a grant, before we even get into like the nitty gritty. Talk about what you're doing, what you want to do, ideas, how would that then mesh with our focus? If it doesn't, we work very closely, as I was telling with like Oshai and several of the others, that might be a better mix. They will call me and say, this grantee probably should be working with you. So there's a lot of that going back and forth, that kind of relationship. So it's really about, for us, about getting to know the people first before we even get into the process of making a grant. And we are very open to whatever a program can be to improve the life of a child or a young adult. That's what, that's basically what we're about. So for us to do what we need to do, we need the people out there doing the work. And so we look at that as, we're partners more so than that grantor relationship. We're just really partners, and we try to develop that as we move forward. So it's kind of how we approach it.
So as Catherine said, being a private foundation, we do have to distribute 5% of our assets every year. So our foundation has over $60 million. So, we're close to $3 million that we need to distribute on an annual basis. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily know about private foundations, is you have to do this every year. We're a trust, so you can establish a foundation in two ways. One can be a nonprofit corporation, which has a board of directors, and it can be more flexible with what they do and how they do it, and even change the mission over time should a board choose to do so. We're a trust, so we're very restricted in our purpose, and we actually can't change our purpose without getting permission from the Attorney General and going through a whole court process. Most family foundations are funded by one person's wealth, which of course is how we are funded as well, by Bill Pomeroy. And we we work a lot with our community foundation in Syracuse. And one of the things that they do, as you stated, is you're the eyes and ears for your donors, is they will contact us and say, hey, we were just approached for a grant, but we think that really might fit well with what you do at the Pomeroy Foundation, because being a private foundation and a small family foundation with just 3 trustees, with a very restricted purpose, we're not all over the community, and we're not a broad-based funder that works with a lot of different organizations. So, I encourage you to get to know your community foundation, because not only can they help you find donors, they help donors find ways when you have sort of a niche purpose like we do. So I think that's important to work with your community foundations as well. And we're online also. We have a very easy, straightforward grant application online, and it works great for us, and it works great for you, because then you've got a history right there at your fingertips as well, and your dashboard of what you've applied for and the grants that you've received from our organization as well. We meet on an as-needed basis because there's, like I said, there's 3 trustees, Bill, his wife, and myself. So, we don't have these structured board meetings, and though we are trying to grow up. We're trying to grow up now that Bill sold his companies in 2016. So prior to that, we were run out of the corporate office and had corporate responsibilities as well. So, but now we're focusing full time foundation and going to be putting some more structure and maybe adding some more trustees and growing it.
Thank you for the plug for community foundations. So as a community foundation, we are not bound by the same, 5% rule, but generally we recommend that our fund holders distribute about 4% of their fund based on the balance for this whole formula to really try to protect their endowment. So our funds are made up of funds of the community. So we manage over 500 separate funds at our foundation. We're governed by board of directors. We have a finance and audit and investment committee that helps manage all of those funds. We are about $70 million in assets, a little bit over that right now, and typically we do about $3 million in grant making. But because of some recent partnerships with private and family foundations, that just bumped up to $15 million in grant making for our foundation. So you can see, depending on your community and who's there and who decides to invest in you, it can really kind of shift the impact of philanthropy through those community foundations. So the range in foundations, community foundations, can be as small as $100,000 in assets up to $3 billion, I think, is what Silicon Valley has. so it's really important to connect with your foundation. We, like I said, we have competitive grants. Our focus with our funds that we raise is for capacity building. So we give some small grants, which could be breeder equipment. I think Art Smith Hudson received some stackable chairs for their presentations a few years ago. I mean, sometimes that's all you need, or you may, a lot of technology grants, laptops, computers, lighting for theater groups, and also strategic planning, board retreats, those types of funds. We really do feel like there's an impact with that type of investment. And we use an online portal for that as well. I think some of the other things that our foundation does and others like us is, we are a resource for nonprofits. We do try to offer some workshops once or twice a year that may be valuable to nonprofits. We also have our development staff who will go and speak to nonprofit boards about planned giving or about fundraising. So, we try to go beyond just the funding. And then, like Paula mentioned, we'll often connect with other, local family foundations or private foundations. And we have something that's like, well, we don't have the funds for this, but this could be a fit. And we've really been trying to do much better about making those connections and passing those things along. It's resulted in some great funding.
So given the amount of the assets, we're a little more structured. We do have regular meetings. We have 9 trustees. Part of our responsibility is to grow the assets that Mr. Arshai originally put into the fund. So we have some really smart people on our investment committee who kind of figure out what's the best way for us to steward those dollars. And so we also have a requirement, 5% requirement. What's interesting is that Mr. Arshai, as many foundation founders say, really wanted this to go on in perpetuity. Now we're having this interesting happening here in the Buffalo community. Ralph Wilson, who is the owner of the Buffalo Bills, among other things, has recently distributed dollars to both Buffalo and Detroit and has set a time limit to say that within 20 years, this, an astronomical amount of money has got to be spent. Yeah, and so it's interesting because while you think, wow, that would be fantastic, I'm sure anybody that's connected with any of the Wilson people, it's also really hard because you want to make sure you're distributing the money in the right way. So we sort of have the advantage at Oishei that we do have this expectation of perpetuity. So while we are required to spend 5%, there are years when we've gone, substantially above that because the needs of the community required us to do that. Balancing that with making sure that the assets grow is really the sort of the art and science of a larger foundation. But I do think, as a number of our local folks have said, Buffalo in particular has a very collaborative sort of mindset, even among the funders. Now, I know the funders are all getting together, particularly now with the whole Wilson thing coming in, because part of the question is that Wilson is going to be funding in some dramatic ways areas that other foundations are focused on. Do we then step back from some of those areas and start to rechannel some of our assets into other areas? So we're trying to be smart about what's going to be the best impact for the community. Because again, Mr. Arshai was very focused on the Buffalo and surrounding area community. So that's where 100% of our dollars are spent.
And that's my question on the board board chair for a national nonprofit, folk arts and education focus. And we're national. We're not geographically restricted. We're not in a city. We're not even in one state. Can you speak to geographics of foundations?
Well, I think in our case, even if the programming or the project was happening within our area, which would be, let's say, the 8 counties of Western New York, you would be eligible to, apply for us, as long as the program itself, the entity doesn't have to be home-based in Western New York. Just what you're doing does. So that would be one way that we would look at it.
Yeah, very similar. So in Western New York, we are restricted to the 8 counties of Western New York. Northeastern New York, we have 13 counties in our service area, and the programming has to take place in those areas. Most often, though, to your point, we do partner with organizations that are based in those service areas. Occasionally, we have partnered, so we recently partnered with the National Safety Council. So it's a national organization, it's a government organization. They had an opioid-specific exhibit that they wanted to bring to Buffalo. That's something that's very important to our company, and so we sponsored that. So that's a way we partnered with a national organization that was doing something specifically in our area.
I mean, as a community foundation, we are very geographically placed. All of our competitive grant making is in that 3-county region for the most part, but our donors are able to direct funds nationally or internationally. We can give beyond those 3-county borders, and we often do. I think it's more about developing that relationship with the donor probably, and letting them know that they can give, through that fund should they have it. But I'm often, working with a donor who is either, making grants outside of a region or maybe looking for something that's not in our region and that they want to support. So, primarily we're going to be focused on those 3 counties, but we can give beyond that as well.
She made it.
And what if you're not an entity? What if you're a person? I have a particular interest in a certain area and would like to bring that to more people. I am not an organization. I am not a 501c3. I'm not anything like that. How do I? And I'm absolutely new at all of this. So how do I begin to proceed?
So I'll jump in because I know the Community Foundation, we'll meet with individuals who are maybe working on a program or, have something they want to bring to the community or have some funding to see to fruition. And so we have acted as a fiscal sponsor for certain programs. It's very costly for us to do that. So we've stepped back for the most part in doing that, but we would probably work with you to connect you with someone who could fiscally sponsor you because we can't make a grant to an individual. But if, we connect you to some organization who may be willing to do that, and then maybe we have to pay some funds that way.
We do that regularly as well. So we just kind of try to find that 501c3 that would align with what it is you want to do, and then they act as a pass-through. So we fund them, and then they fund the work you do.
And I guess this goes back to the thing I said maybe earlier. Same thing. We have to abide by the guidelines. It's got to be 501c3. But it's the notion of using your particular idea towards a goal that the community, like when Kate was talking about the opioid thing. So, for example, if there was a way that your idea could tie into, detection of or prevention, whatever, then it's sometimes easier to find the organization that has a natural inclination to use your particular idea or methodology to solve another community, need. So that might be a way of kind of thinking about how might your particular idea or pathway address something that the community is facing or that one of these foundations has seen as listed as a priority.
It's been startup grants for new nonprofits that don't have a history of receiving grants. Maybe for the community foundation.
Yes, foundation does. I mean, we definitely fund, kind of the tried and true folks in the community, but I should have mentioned before too, all of our grant processes are decided by community committees. You know, staff don't make any decisions. We kind of steward the process, but it's all by committee members. And I find the committees are really looking for that kind of new program that's going to add to community. We don't want to see duplication. We don't want to, but there's kind of always a little bit of room for new folks to get on board.
We have a lot of coalitions and initiatives within our Western New York area, and I know they do across the country. And so those really just trying to get started as to how they're going to do that work. And so we have funded quite a bit of that, and have our board members, myself, have even acted as advisors depending on what they need, if they need legal help or accounting help. And we have professionals that we've done in-kind support for that as well. So there's a lot of that goes on.
So it's based on what the mission of that nonprofit is that you would, because they don't have a record of what they've done, and that's why.
Right, it's all about what the mission is going to be. And again, the people that are involved in it. So that's why it's so important that the people that are doing it are building a relationship with the foundations, and really bring the foundations in the beginning, when you're starting to do that planning and that organizing, because they can bring, I think, a lot of knowledge about what currently exists in the community, as well as how to go about doing it, and then bringing, the people together that can help you do what you want to do. So I always say, don't wait until you think you've got it all ready to submit a grant. I always say, right from the start, reach out to as many foundations as you want, and have them sit at the table with you right from the start.
Thank you. Our community foundation in Jacksonville, it has a nonprofit, like how to start a nonprofit class. They have a whole series for, I think, 3 to 6 months you can sign up. So I'm in the process of that. So I'm looking forward to the future now. Like, okay, now what's the next step after we finish those things? It's a scary process.
It is scary. That's why it's good to have people that have lived it, or we see it every day in the work that we do. So it's not as intimidating for us because we know this can be done.
It has to start somewhere.
It has to start somewhere.
Thank you.
I have a question, just maybe for community foundation, also for private. So at our museum in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, we had a curriculum project that I led, and it was sponsored by a community foundation, also the state funding. The project took a totally different direction halfway through implementation. So how do your foundations sort of resolve that when a project that's funded ends up going in a positive but way different direction than the grantee intended?
We had that happen this past year, and basically, the organization, they just reached out to us and they called us and they said, this is not, it's not going in the direction that we intended it to go, and it's just not playing out the way we presented this to you, and we've met, and this is the direction they wanted to change the direction. It was somewhat similar, but they were taking a different direction with it. And they were just very honest with us and, told us the reasons why, what they were going to do to correct it, and, and we appreciated the fact that rather than continue on in this path that's not having impact the way we, all of us thought it was going to, we very much appreciated that they wanted to do a course correction, and they were just very open and honest, and we had that conversation, and we, decided that we agreed with what they wanted to do, and we gave them their blessing, and they did, and it's working. So, we would much rather just be completely honest. That's part of building the relationship is, being honest and doing what you're going to say you're going to do, and if that doesn't work, communicate with us, and we'll figure out, the best path to go forward.
I think it happens frequently, especially with new projects, because you're not really sure. This is what you want to do, but you're really not sure what the outcome is going to be. And we understand that. We also understand that you're the experts in this. So we're not going to tell you how you should do it. We want you to tell us how you're going to do it. And then if it doesn't go the way you thought, again, communication, conversation, conversation, you know, but you're still going, you know, where it needs to go. We'd rather have it shift and be successful than tank, you know, and then say, okay, we really didn't get any impact out of that at all. So I think it's very common, and foundations, I think, are very open, but as she said, it's really, Pam said, it's about really having that communication, that openness, and continuing that conversation throughout the grant. Because once you get the check, don't stop talking to the foundation.
Keep us in the loop.
Keep us in the loop. And if it's something's going wrong, let us know. We might be able to help fix it, you know, or at least guide you to someone who could. Or if something is going well, let us know, because the board members really want to know about what's happening. Most people that sit on foundation boards are pretty engaged, concerned people. They really care about their community. That's why they're doing this. And so they want to know, you know. And just because something goes wrong, we learn from that too. So we know, okay, we're not going to go down that road again. And then we learn, because if someone comes to us and says, I want to do this, we can say, well, they did and it didn't work, so you might want to talk to them first before you, and then redesign how you do it.
So we become examples of things that go horribly right.
Exactly.
This is, I'm looking more for an opinion, I think. No one here is part of a foundation that is invitation only. Can you talk about that? There's a major funder in the Midwest now who is like this secret, silent, very well funded entity that you might hear from and you might not. And, you know, and they're doing great work, but it's entirely at their direction, 100% at their direction. So I'm curious about if this is a minority of how foundations work, as you know, and what your opinion is or experience with.
I would say it's a minority, but not uncommon. And sometimes it can just be based on, so I think earlier when we were talking about the difference between foundations and needing to disperse a certain amount of money in a certain set period of time, the amount of requests you receive can be overwhelming to what you are able to disperse at that time. So I think sometimes, depending on the structure of the foundation or the organization, it can really be, that is how they focus. It can seem unfair. I'm sure it can seem unfair. And that's where a lot of the relationship building kind of comes in. But oftentimes it can, I would say, it can be really just to help this organization focus and kind of limit, because oftentimes you don't have big staffs. You know, like we work for a corporation, we have a staff of 4 who handle the influx of requests to what we're able to give. And sometimes it can be a little bit like that. Not always, but I would err on the side of well-intentioned versus trying to be exclusive. If anyone from like
And this has come up, I think every community has them. So she said they're not uncommon.
Yeah.
But they are becoming less and less as time moves on. At least that's what I've noticed. I've been doing this for 24 years, and they were much more common in the beginning when I started doing this. I see less and less of that now. But a lot of nonprofits will come and say, how do I get to X foundation, because it's invitation only. Sometimes we can help, just set up a coffee or a lunch, or I'll go and sit, maybe I can call them, because, you know, I have a little different relationship, and just say, I have this nonprofit, and, you know, this is what they're looking to do, would you be interested? And they can say yes, or they can say no, and then I can go back and let them know, and then maybe set up a little
we're also always looking for funds as a community foundation, but we're also there to advocate for nonprofits and these programs. But ultimately, we're there for the community. So, yeah, and sometimes we might just have a little different way in than the typical organization or individual. So, yeah, so I guess just share your program and your needs, with as many foundations and partnerships we can. Maybe we'll get to the ear.
Tim, and then the other side of that is that someone mentioned earlier about most of the foundations now have online processes. That's kind of democratized the idea of anybody can kind of come, and in the case of Oshai, they have a process by which you first do a kind of a short letter of intent, just to kind of spell out so you don't waste time putting together a whole sort of application. And that's been, I think, a great way of not just no, but this is why it doesn't fit, and you might consider thinking about other sources as a result. So I think there's been in some cases a lessening of that sense that it's only the chosen few that will actually get funded. Because if anything, it's a question of how do you redirect somebody who's got a worthy idea but just isn't going to fit for purposes of for our intent. So I think that's been really positive. I think that'll continue to open and give more open access to a number of these funders. So.
That's great. One other thing that we do with the foundations is and this is becoming more and more common, is that we will, for instance, sponsor a meeting, and I will reach out and invite all of my colleagues in the foundation world and tell them if there's this nonprofit, there's a startup, or this, and would you have an interest in learning more about this? And then the nonprofit comes and makes one presentation to 5, 6, 10 of us in the room. And then they can get a real feel for how the foundations, plural, feel about that. Because some will just say, well, this just really isn't falling into our bucket of funding, or, I am really interested. And it helps the nonprofit that they don't have to go to 10 different meetings. And it also then gives us a chance as funders to kind of talk about how we would maybe do this collectively. If they want, especially a large dollar amount, how would we all come together to cover that piece? So those are other ways to get people together.
So one of the other questions I asked was best practices. I think from your own experience as a donor, grantee, funds administrator, name 3 best practices for creating relationships with potential donors. So how do we even begin? The letter of intent is one way, but how do we even begin to get that relationship? What's the first date?
First step is research. When you're going to seek funds from an organization, be it a corporate donor or a foundation, find out what their giving areas are. More often than not, we put them right on our website. And so, for instance, with Pomeroy, you have very specific giving, and we do too. We have about 8 filters that we put right on our website. So try to tailor your requests. So as I said in the beginning, we focus primarily on health. It's not uncommon that we work with educational or historic or cultural organizations. Make it relevant to what we're looking for. For one example, there's a children's museum in town who came to us and was simply asking for a sponsorship, but couldn't really articulate how it would impact the health of our community. And we were honest with them and said, we don't really think this is a fit for our filters. A month later, they came back and said, we want to offer 3 hours of free physical activities on Saturdays to any visitor who comes to the museum. And we said, thank you. Like, they listened, they came back, they tailored what they were going to do, and it was a very easy yes for us. So think of that. Look at what the parameters are, and think about what your programming is and how you can make that fit into what they're looking for.
And then right following that would be a phone call. I can't emphasize enough the personal contact with the staff person, the contact person, whomever that is, before you put even the letter of intent in, because we have the same system as well. When I get letter of intents, I usually know everything about that already. I've had the conversation, we've met, I might have come out and seen the site, but definitely have had the time to sit down with the person, talk about their ideas, and kind of, as she said, tailor it towards what our focus area is. And sometimes in those conversations, people, they'll be talking, and they won't think it's relevant to what we're doing, and I'll be like, wait a minute, what you said over there is more relevant for our funding than actually what you're saying here, so let's develop this idea. And so it really it's that personal connection.
Agreed, and even though we do have, our giving areas on our website, on our grant portal, we still get applications that have nothing to do with, what we're gonna fund, and sometimes in the mail, and I always feel terrible that someone has put all this effort, all this time and effort into, and it's just, boom, lands on your desk without a phone call, without, and that still does happen, so please don't do that. Just call, exactly. We still do like that, that personal touch, even though everything is online and convenient. And we've had organizations just, have us come over and just sit down and we had a proposal to digitize all the records at the Erie Canal Museum in Syracuse that were donated by the Canal Society of New York. And it's a large grant, it's a 3-year grant, and they had us come over and we crawled up into the attic and we saw all of these boxes and they, pulled out just some cool stuff that, that now is going to be available to digitize this to the general public, to researchers, to teachers, to genealogists, etc. And then it was a beautiful day, and they have a little garden, and we went outside and we had a glass of wine, and they introduced us to the person that was going to be doing the digitization, and it was just very personal, and we just got to know each other, and it was just a great meeting and just a very informal conversation, and it just, you can't say enough for the personal touch.
So even though they don't necessarily fall into the two categories, it was a phone call that led you to believe that this is something we still want to do.
Right, because we still, even though, we do more than historic signage in our preserving history. Historic signage is the main thing we do, but we do some other grants in the history arena as well.
I think the other thing I'd recommend is, I think most of these organizations will publish annual reports. Look and see what organizations have been funded, and you can go back over the past couple of years, and Shai's case, I'm sure others, in each one of the categories, we list the grants that were done in a particular year in that category. So I'm even thinking about your question about who would be the right organization to maybe bring my idea to and see if it has resonance. Look and see how it's been funded. And in Shai's case, it's large, medium, small, and very small. So you just get a flavor of what has been funded successfully. So.
And you can get some of that from foundations online.
Yeah,
sure.
But you don't always get what's some GuideStar, but sometimes missing from that is like, oh, you funded City Lore, but you don't necessarily know what they got funded for, or you funded, and sometimes that's helpful to us too, is what exactly was it?
Yeah, we try to list on our site, and I don't know about other community foundations, but for each competitive program, we list the prior 5-year grants, the dollar amount, and like a brief summary of what their funding was, just because we get so many requests for some of these programs, it's a great resource for folks to stay in.
There's also the Foundation Center, which you can search online. I believe there's a small section that's free, but your libraries have a Foundation Center, and you can search by program area, geography, event, festival, whatever, and it'll bring you up the list of foundations that are fund in that area that you're looking for.
And there's even a way to exclude invitation only. So if you don't want to have pass with others. Yeah, there's a computer with my name on it.
Yeah, surprised at how many foundations there are that you just never knew existed. A lot of family foundations and trusts that you just didn't even hear about.
And also for your startup, there's an organization called TechSoup. And if you're a 501c3 or probably an educational institution, I'm not sure, you can purchase software at greatly discounted prices. So I encourage you to.
I have a, if you wanna go
Yep.
first, she had a question.
Oh, I was just wondering if we kind of like finish out this sort of schedule, I guess, that you guys started, where it starts with research and then a phone call and then a meeting in person and your letter of intent. Where does it go from there? What are the next steps?
For us, then we would invite you to, after all of that, then if we're interested in pursuing more, then we would invite you to officially apply online and fill out that application.
Pretty much the same for us.
Yeah.
And I think, as we said earlier, I think most of the online pieces now have really taken the guesswork out of it. Like, you don't have to be a professional grant writer. You may still have to do that for government-related stuff, but I think for most of the private foundations, they're pretty clear about what you need to cover in your application. So that, again, goes back to the democratization of this. I think it's now easier for people to say, all right, I get what they're interested in, and let me address what they're asking for. Doesn't completely eliminate the need to build a relationship, because obviously as you get to know in the case of OSHI, the staff are the ones that recommend the grants. The board essentially looks at it and says, okay, let's think strategic about how this is working, but our grant people, our program people are the ones that come to the board and say, here's who we should fund and here's how much and here's why. So again, building that relationship helps, but just being able to go through the process of filling out the actual online application is pretty straightforward.
And really in your application, the big piece is telling your story, which all of you should be really good at. And that's really all we wanna know is we just, from yourself, it doesn't have to be any, great American novel. Just tell your story, and that's what the directors wanna look at, that's what I wanna see. And so, that's the biggest part of our application, is just, the rest is all you fill in, the statistical stuff, and, that kind of thing.
Well, I was gonna just follow up on Ann's question. With state and federal grants, you can ask for a certain amount, and often you get less than you ask for. For foundations, is it usually all or nothing? I mean, do you say, oh, well, we requested 15, it's too much, but we'll give you 8. You do that kind of.
We definitely do a lot of partial funding. We wrote out
Matching, working with other foundations to see if they can pick up, a portion of it. But yeah, partial funding is, that's why I always encourage people when you do your budgets to really outline the detail in your budget, so that if they decide they want to do partial, they can really just go to the budget and say, we're really interested in funding, the program piece, and we'll fund this, but we don't want to fund buying a new iPad and just picking it up. So they can kind of just pick and choose that way. And it makes the turnaround time to get your answer much quicker.
Yeah, I think one of the unique things about the Community Foundation, we have our competitive process. You do the LOI, you do the application, it goes to a committee, you either are funded, fully funded, partially funded, not funded. And then we take all of those applications that our committee was like, oh, if only we had more money. And we do at least 2 mailings a year to our donor community that are giving opportunities. So we say, this is what our committee reviews, in the last 6 months. These are projects that we really found value, but we don't have funding. And we're becoming much more successful with connecting, these organizations with donors who are interested. In some cases, it's maybe there's a $5,000 gap, and we can get 2 or 3 donors to come together and make that request whole. So I love that we kind of have that opportunity to have a second life for all the work that organizations do, and we've been really making a big effort on making that giving opportunities program work.
We like to do matching grants or challenge grants. So, we might get a request for $20,000, and we'll say, well, we'll match, 10,000, because we want to know that this is important to the community, that this program is taking place. So a way for us to be able to judge that is to do a challenge grant or a matching grant. So we actually do that quite often.
I have a question just about people you connect with in an organization, because we have a development director who usually she does the calls, she has the lunch meetings. But do foundations like to specifically just hear from the development director? Are they more interested in possibly hearing from the people who will be the project managers? Because something, we have a staff of about 30 people, and so some instances we wouldn't really like to be the ones talking about the project, because we'll be the ones facilitating. But I'm curious, like our foundation is typically, they want somebody who speaks, I call it Grandese.
No, we don't.
No, I want the program.
I want the program person. You know, it's great, the development person can do the groundwork, right, can do the research, can make that first call, and set up that meeting, but at that meeting, you should be there.
And I think,
Absolutely, and the development person kind of takes a step back at that point.
yeah, I think for us, doing site visits are so critical, and, you know, sometimes we're so bogged down with the grind of our work, so we're not always as great with scheduling that, you know, because we have so many different organizations, so I love it when, you know, someone's like, hey, we're doing this thing, come on down, visit us. Great, I happen to have this, even if it's short notice, sometimes that works the best for me. That may not be the same for others, but whenever I get to go out on a site visit, I feel like I just get so much more. You know, I feel like I know an organization, and then I'm just, whoa, there's this whole other layer or this thing that I had no idea. So, and a lot of that is just from meeting the staff, meeting the program.
Oshai does this annual bus trip, and the current chair of the board was my boss for 31 years in the company that I worked for. And he'd come back from this bus trip, and the bus trip basically was to go visit the sites of some of the maybe the new programming, or some of the more interesting or the more successful, and it's always meeting the people that are actually doing the work. And that's at the heart of what we're trying to get at. But he'd come back and he'd like so pumped up, I'm like, oh my God, this is good. So, but and I've been able to go on one now as a new trustee, and it's exhilarating to actually see the program in action and to talk to the people that are making it work. So I completely agree. It's the people that are doing the work that ultimately the funder wants to connect with.
I have a question. This is more of a specific question, but do you guys know of Stitch Buffalo in Jacksonville? And do you know of Stitch Buffalo in Jacksonville? Okay. We're starting a women's, immigrant refugee women's arts group in Jacksonville, which Stitch Buffalo is. And my question is, how do you like have the startup for it, but then they sell their products at the end? So like to start up for materials and things to get the group started, is that okay to have a nonprofit as like having the startup for the grants, but then selling the products that they make? Because it's kind of like a nonprofit and kind of like a
Well, they're not
business
really
for them.
becoming a for-profit though, right? They're selling their
They're
products
benefiting
and turning it back into the nonprofit.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not an
That's
issue.
okay. Okay. Because I was kind of confused with it being like a business because they're
No,
selling.
because all nonprofits should have some revenue. We would hope they do.
Sure, sure.
Makes our life a lot easier to have something coming in. So that would be revenue to sustain your nonprofit, as long as, you know, it's going back into the
Even though they make a
organization.
profit though too from what they make, I mean, the nonprofit would get a percentage of that to continue to fund the program, but then the artisans would make a percentage of their sales.
Well, staff people are paid.
Okay, so it's the same kind of idea.
Same kind of idea.
Thank you.
At the Arts Council with Southern Finger Lakes, where I am currently, we take 30%, and that goes back into the revenue to generate the programs. With the Community Foundation of Corning and Elmira, absolutely supports us.
Yeah, we take 25%, but in our artist league 75, but.
And it just totally flips back in.
Right.
Thank you. This is a question.
So I'm interested in the contact. From what you said, it sounds like the phone numbers and contact people are available.
Yes.
So how do I find it? Just by looking online?
Well, if you don't know looking on, you could do a Google search, foundations in Western New York, or, you know,
The
wherever
ones
you.
that I found, generally they seem to have a wall between us and them. So if I make a phone call which is there, it's very formal and there's no person like you who was saying we'd love to talk to you about your ideas. Never found that, but that's, I haven't done a big search either.
Hopefully you would, because I know, I would say, I can speak for Western New York, and knowing the foundations in Western New York, there might be one foundation in Western New York that wouldn't take a call, and the other, there's about 65 really active foundations would, and then there's 1,100 family foundations. Those
So
you
we-
might not get a call because they could be small family foundations and they're not staffed and the people, you know, but they would have a way to reach them through mail or email. And they used to.
Understood, thank you.
But if you go to GuideStar or it's at the foundation side, you should be able to get that contact information. But don't give up. Most of them will take your call.
And I think some of the larger foundations, like we have this pretty thing where we have pictures of everybody, so you can identify who the people are, and then to your point, Google them, and there's a way certainly to get through.
Yeah, we put our directors on our website as well.
That fine line between stalking and.
But I think it comes back to, I think the point that was made earlier is our business is to support you. That's our business. Our business is to give away money, to support and make impact in the community. So we can't do that without the nonprofits. We can't do that without you. So it is a partnership, and we can't do what we need to do if we don't know what's happening out there and if people don't call us and connect with us. So I think there's always been that fear that if I call, will I aggravate somebody? Will I not? And all that. And I always say, no. We're professionals. It's a professional situation, and we'll happily have that discussion. And if it's not something we can fund, I know we're just really upfront and say it's just not within our focus area, but I can make a few suggestions, or if you need any help, call me back.
I think that's probably the biggest revelation for me so far this morning is, we can call and start that relationship before you even apply for a grant, which you don't really do with a government grant. It's just, and which is what most of us are used to. And in fact, with some government grants, we can't even really ask questions. We can't call and ask questions. So I have one thing. If you choose not to fund, sometimes, when you just get a no, and what you really need is why was the no? Is that something we can also do? Please tell us why we didn't get it. Even if it's just, I'm sorry, but there were so many great applications, but it's important. It's always good for me to know, so the next time I apply. And I'm sometimes, when I do get the grant, sometimes I want to know, what was it? What was that? What was that thing? Yeah, it was the same way as when I got the A on an essay. I still wanted lots of comments to know,
Why did I get that?
what was the thing? What did I do right this time? So can we get,
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, it's often volume. I mean, we just are often out of dollars before we get halfway down that list of applications. But we have committee meetings, there's discussion, and so if there are any specifics that I can glean from that, I'm happy to share that.
We try to give as much feedback as well. And I've even had nonprofits call and say, I got a note from X Foundation, but I don't know why. Call them and ask them. Don't be afraid, because that's how you know for the next time.
And we've had calls both ways, like simply asking what was it about the application that didn't fit, and we've also had angry calls asking why, and that is not great for relationship building. Obviously, there are organizations that we have declined due to budget or to volume of requests, and it's not that we wouldn't consider them again in the future. And so we're happy to take a call and give some further explanation as to why. And keep in mind that don't burn the bridge, and just kind of take the feedback into account, and use it in the future if you decide to apply again.
So once let's say you're invited to apply for a grant or for something, and then you apply, and if you get a grant or you get funding, what does the process look like from there?
It varies by funder. So, and I'm sure all 5 of us, you'll get very detailed explanations or requests for process and requests for reporting. I'd be shocked if anybody up here didn't say that reporting the impact matters a lot. Don't go dark. Talk to us during, however long the funding is for whatever the program is for. Talk to us along the way. Tell us the impact. Tell us what you did. Tell us how many people were impacted and what they did. And so it'll vary. When you're granted funds, it will often come with some explanation or a certain level of expectation expectation from your funder on what we hope to hear from you and get from you during the course of our relationship. So there's not gonna be a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, we usually do a grant agreement that's tailored specifically to your request, your approval. And it outlines, you know, specifics that we're looking for, deadline dates to do evaluations, things of that nature, all dependent on how the grant was written and, you know, and how it's being funded. But you will get everything in writing from there. And then the evaluations are all done online, and so there's a connection with the online application system for most people.
Although I feel like with one of the grants I've gotten from the Community Foundation, there was no.
Yeah, so our competitive grants all have grant agreements, and a follow-up report, but our donor advised or our designated fund grants, unless they're at a high dollar amount, we don't require that. So I know one of the grants you received, it was just, here are your funds.
Right, which is
We
lovely,
expect you to
utilize
utilize
that.
that.
Which was, and then I kept, and I have to confess, I kept going back and looking, it's like, I'm sure.
You don't have to technically report back on those. I mean, by cashing that check, you're agreeing that you're going to utilize these funds in a responsible way, or as you know the request was. But for those types of funds, yeah, we don't have the same layer. Mostly just because the volume of that grant making, we wouldn't be able to keep up on the reports. The other thing I want to say is we love getting photographs because we're always looking as a community foundation to tell the story of the community. And with the work that you're all doing, I'm sure there's some great stuff that we could be including in our materials.
So even if there is no reporting mechanism, you still,
You can always, yeah.
You know, I think for us, it's sort of like, oh, thank
Yeah.
God we don't have to write a report.
Exactly.
Right.
And
You know, so it's like, oh, one
right.
thing off our plate, but it's important to know that it needs to stay on the plate.
Yeah.
And if it's just a letter and some photos, that's way easier than
Absolutely.
some of the reporting we
Yeah.
have to do.
Yeah.
Just like take a photo after a program that you did,
And
send an email and
Yeah.
say, you know, this was a great success, we had blah, blah, blah people there, it was so much
And for
fun.
us, if we're working with a donor, if those funds, I mean, certainly if it came through a competitive process, we share that with our committee. But if it came from a donor or an anonymous donor, we'll always, you know, send those photos along, and it's such a great touch. So, yeah, always, you know, keep telling, getting that feedback.
And I think I've actually been remiss in even making sure to invite you to events.
Yeah,
You know,
and like I said, you know, it's hard to get, but just keep sending the invitations. 'Cause when we can be there, we want to be there.
Sorry, just making
Ooh, I have her notes.
my notes back there. We also have worst practices. But, so maybe go to worst practices, and then if there's time, sort of talking specifically about how we, as folklorists and the projects we do, we could talk about some of the projects we do and how they might fit in to what you do, because you'll find we're all really pretty different. But I also asked them for worst practices. You know, what are sort of the worst things that we could do?
Like yelling when you don't get the funds.
Yeah.
The angry phone
But you know, it's
call.
funny because I sit next, Arts in Hudson is a re-grant agency. We do the decentralization grants for NISCA, and we also do grants for Ulster and Dutchess counties and Pollock Krasner and stuff. And it's really amazing, some of the calls, because I sit next to the grant manager, and she's so great. And some, you know, it's like, are you kidding me? You know, this is how you want to go forward with this relationship, you know. But what other sorts of things are bad ideas?
Well, just, you know, we've talked a lot about communication, and I think, you know, don't just approach us when you're asking for money. It's important to keep that relationship going, whether it's a year that maybe there's a year you're not gonna ask us for money, but, you know, continue inviting us to things, continue keeping us informed of, you know, the impact that you're having in the community. We don't wanna just hear from you when, you're gonna put in a grant request. And say thank you, a thank you letter. You'd be surprised, you don't always get an acknowledgement letter, and that goes a long way. And, you know, we share them with the trustees.
And I think just what we were talking a little earlier, when you make a change or you take a shift and you don't communicate that, and then the grant comes to an end and we get the evaluation and we're reading it and it's like, but this is nothing of what we talked about. And not that that's a bad thing, because if it turns out right or not, but we really, you know, we're kind of, I think the directors are kind of offended because they're like, but we want to be engaged, we want to know what's going on, and we feel a part of this, and we feel like they feel like they were left out. So, you know, it's just communication can be your enemy or your friend.
I guess the other thing I would suggest is try not to apply for your grant with blinders on. And it goes back to this idea of try and have some sense of what else is going on in the community that might be connected to or related to. Because if the program director knows about 16 other things that are somehow similar to what you're asking about and you don't, it doesn't bode well in terms of you being sort of really aware of what's going on. And so you all know your communities, you know, better than any of us do. But try and get as aware as you can of other things that are going on in that space. And again, I keep going back to the opioid thing. We've got like 100,000 things going on right now around opioids. Let's have a sense of who's doing what. And again, a lot of that is public information. A lot of it is, you know, sort of just connecting with people in your spaces and saying, because you're gonna have to be a much more compelling applicant if you say this kind of builds on what was done in this organization, and in fact we're talking about collaborating with so-and-so to get this outcome. So that at least for Oshai, always strengthens an application to be aware of the context in which you're asking for your funding.
Did you have a question?
I think I do. So thank you for being here, and thanks, Eleanor, for organizing this. I work for the Brooklyn Arts Council, and we have, you know, many arts councils have, some have development directors. And so sometimes I have a problem because I'm totally controlling. And I wonder about who you'd rather hear from, a development director or a folk arts director that might know the intricacies a bit more. And I don't want to step on toes at times with the development person or even my executive director, but I think some of the struggles that we have within some of the organizations is that there's sometimes different filters. What would you rather us? How would you rather us communicate? What's the best way to handle that? Maybe that's a question for you, and maybe the rest of you in this audience.
Yeah, I think we did this a little bit earlier, and I think the answer's both.
I'm
you
sorry.
know, no. I think it's good to revisit. I mean, it's important for us to talk with the development staff, and that's good. But I think when we speak with program staff, we just get that other layer, and it's really vital. You know, we want to meet with you. We want to see your program and understand that. And I was sharing with you last night. You know, I work with Arts of Hudson. I know them. You know, they apply for grants, but I don't think I understood the depths of the work that they were doing with folklore until I sat down and met with Eleanor. You know, so that was really vital to understanding, to be able to share that out with donors. So as long as you can, as long as your organization is okay with having that level of access, I think that we do want to hear from both. And maybe that's just one meeting because we,
right.
You know, our time is constrained, but yeah.
Gotcha.
Thanks.
Our program is very large, not in terms of money, but in terms of scope, what we do. We are the Georgian Cultural Center in Brooklyn. So we're dealing with performances, with classes for children, with families trying to educate their children in the Georgian culture, and 1,000 other things. And so when I consider applying for a grant, usually the grants seem to try and funnel into events, specific things, and our real need is for global money so that we can do things. So what's the best way to proceed with that? I mean, we are slightly successful with government grants. We get some, and we're very happy for that. And so we've navigated that course to be able to focus what certain things that are appropriate. But in general, how could we get something that would give us the flexibility to develop our programs in the right way? And that part of that is to convince, let's say, you people that we really know our stuff, but we don't always focus on projects.
So you're looking for general operation funding.
It's that,
funding.
yeah.
And yeah, that's how how you would request it as an operational funding for the overall, and we do fund in those areas. Not, I don't know if everyone does, but when you do your research, that will show you the foundations that will fund operational issues or capacity building issues.
How should we approach that? I know we have to do our search.
You do your search,
Contacts.
and then you have this conversation with people that you feel will fund operations. So you have your list of foundations, you call them and say, you know, this is what we want to do, can we sit down and kind of talk about it? And if they're used to funding in operations, they'll most likely get it right away of what it is you want to do. But yes, we don't fund just programs or projects. We do fund operations as well.
I direct 2 programs in New York State Council on Youth, and just on this point of development directors, we've seen some real disasters when the executive director of an organization, or the person with substantive responsibility, in this case the folklorist, doesn't have a hand in an application, but it's a structural issue, internal issue. You know, development offices tend to compartmentalize, possess a proprietary about the grants, and it's a delicate thing within organizations, and you know, it's sort of like it's also delicate, you know, dealing with the business internally of organizations. So I just find in my own role that I'm insistent that I talk to people, except in rare instances, people who have a substantive responsibility for a project. You know, I think that it's critical for the organization for that to happen, and I tell the development person from my side that it's harder internally just because of these relationships. I would say though, you know, the development offices I could go on for hours about because I deal with people in all sizes of organizations. There's some development people who are really, they're also artists, they're also, you know, sometimes they're scholars and such, and they understand it pretty deeply, but I think it's just, maybe this is something, I don't know if it's something that should be written into guidelines or whatever, but it's time consuming, it's a source of frustration for us, and it can be really damaging for an organization, but I understand what happens within organizations as well, in terms of, you know, division responsibility. I can sort of speak to that internally because in our museum, our development directors, and we only have 1 grant writer at the staff of 30. So what we've recently done is that basically our directors and our specialists are the ones who do a lot of the research of the grants, and they help us, they kind of, we do like a crowdsourcing on the grant writing, and then it's basically filtered, it's like put through a translation into like a sort of grant format, and that has proved to be really sort of more democratic. It also helps the development director because we're applying for small stuff through like the state or NEA or something like that, while she has the chance to go to, you know, Target Foundation. It's a way to sort of work for us, but it also means that like, you can have 5 people working on a grant together, and there's no cooperation.
Yeah, the key is that the final product is something that you know, you as the person responsibility for the project sees and, you know, feels is comfortable with. I mean, it's you know, that's quite important.
This is just a lesson learned. I'm a recent graduate in folklore cultural sustainability, and our arts group we have in Jacksonville with refugee and immigrant ladies, I tried to find a fiscal sponsor, and we weren't a nonprofit, and it failed terribly. I approached this small organization and asked if they could help, you know, write a grant together. My fault, I didn't have a contract with them, so I helped them write it, and the Community Foundation funded $1,500. And the way that they proposed it was totally different from what I contributed to, and they received the money, and the group never received anything. And I don't know what happened with the $1,500, and I didn't know how to approach the Community Foundation to say something about this because I didn't want to burn bridges because our city is, everybody knows everybody in this kind of work. So now I've learned that we need to start a nonprofit because of this. I mean, people are interested in this kind of work. So I don't know how to approach the Community Foundation because they remember maybe that $1,500 that was given when they didn't understand that how we work together.
Tricky. I mean, I think we would want to know that, and I think that we would also try to respect relationship, and if I got that call, I would be following up with that fiscal sponsor and just like, oh yeah, we need those reports. And
Right,
who knows what was submitted? I mean, they could have.
Is that okay if I, when I do approach the community foundation?
If you were part of that grant, I mean, we actually, our applications work a little bit differently, where we would be receiving applications from you, and you would then be naming that fiscal sponsor and, sharing a letter or something. We would just confirm that
They
that
wanted the
was
project,
there.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
To make their organization keep their programs, to keep programs, but didn't respect that as a
Yeah.
folklorist having a role in that either, and not understanding.
So for us, we would have had an application and really had the primary relationship with you, and then, the funding would still go through them, so it's a little more collaborative than that. But I mean, I would probably reach out to the Community Foundation and just have that conversation, just, say that you were part of this, and it wasn't
It was 1,500, I mean, but
Yeah,
we never
so-
saw any of that, and the ladies in the group that participate, they were asking about it.
Yeah.
They received it, and we don't know what happened to it.
I'd wanna know.
Do you work with any corporate funders or?
No.
So, and I'm just speaking locally here, so you're from Jacksonville, Florida. Is the organization you work with, is it within kind of a specific neighborhood?
Yes, and it's specifically with the refugee community
Right.
there, and I work for a resettlement agency.
Okay.
But I have decided not to partner with resettlement agencies because they are closing their doors, a lot of them, and they tend to be controlling with some things. So it's independent, and we're starting the nonprofit process.
Okay.
But it is in a neighborhood, and we have partnered with the YMCA
Mhm.
for space, and they've been wonderful.
So a lot of
wonderful
banks, and I'm
partners.
sure since you've referenced Buffalo Stitch, are you familiar with Weedy, the Westminster?
Yes, we
No?
visited,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, good. So they have very strong relationships with our local banks in terms of like microloans. And I think that many banks, especially if Jacksonville has any like community banks, have pretty strong relationships and pretty strong community relations managers, which are different than like how my company defines a community relations manager, but they are officers of the bank who work specifically in specific neighborhoods in the cities that they work in. And that might be a great angle for you to try. And I know that has worked very well here on the west side of Buffalo.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We have several, and we were trying to find fiscal sponsors for a long time, and actually that pushed us to say, the ladies in the group, everybody collectively said, well, let's do this as a nonprofit.
Mhm.
And because everybody's wanting to take advantage of it, but not asking the group, what do you want from this?
Mhm.
Getting their feedback, just taking advantage to keep their organizations going a lot of times. And it's complicated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As you were saying with the development directors, we've got, and you said how things have gone terribly wrong. It's gone terribly wrong on our side as well. And so we won't fund anything until we meet with the people doing the program. And that's the people, not even the executive director, but, who's running that program, who's doing that, curriculum, whatever it is, before we will say a final yes to anything, because we've had that same problem. And there's been some very, very good programs that didn't come across well through the development director and didn't get funded. And, then they came back a second time and just trying to get to the people that do the program. And once we do, it's like a whole different program, a whole different, and it's almost an automatic yes, because it's like such a great thing. And of course, we'll get into this. So yeah, that is key. So hopefully, we try to tell development directors that it's not, their job is to get to us, and give you the information you need, and as far as what we do, and maybe set up the meeting. But, we really need to talk to the hands-on people.
Development people come and go,
And they come and
96
go.
months a year, and they don't
Right.
have the institutional memory.
And that is right across the board everywhere. You're right, they come and go very quickly.
And I've seen some organizations like City Law, for example, where the executive director also curates a lot of things, and he's able to, when he talks to funders, he's able to pivot to different projects that he's doing, because he knows we're all like that. We're all doing like 9 different things, and that's just one of the negatives of talking to a development director about specifics, because most of us work within multiple community different types of programmatic platforms and things. And I just think we should all just be aware of that, the development directive thing can be topic.
As someone who has worked at a granting agency, I could always tell when the grant was written by someone hired just to write a grant. There was no connection, you know, to the soul of the organization and the real work. It was really interesting.
Yeah, and that's about grand rhetoric too, you know, sort of, you know, when you say totally self-aggrandizing, you know, it's sort of like it's kind of thin on substance, you know, and you know, it's a sweet spot between telling what you do and, you know, not, you know, laying back about that, but not saying, I think also a real fatal flaw, and panelists always seize on this, is when they say, we're the only one doing this. You know? And, you know, maybe some of the panelists are in, you know, an organization that's in the same field. You know, it's a dumb mistake, but it's also something that's
Or also, this is a dying art. No one else is doing
Yeah,
it.
got it, yeah, okay.
You know, but sometimes it's true. Like our theater company, which we don't apply for right now, but there are no Georgian theater companies. At least I haven't been able to find them. Very interesting.
Well,
We
I
have
know,
one.
but that's accurate.
Yeah, but
Right.
sometimes it's accurate.
Sometimes it is. I've been very impressed with, you know, the many ways in which you have suggested building relationships. It's been very helpful, very informative. And this is kind of a personal question, but I and a partner started a small scholarship fund at our community foundation. And it's so tiny, and it's once a year, and, you know, but I never thought that I should develop a relationship with the foundation staff because of but you're saying, but I should.
Absolutely,
I've been
because you just
missing
never
the-
know where that connection
Okay.
may be.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we have shared so much of our relationships with other funders, with other donors, like there could be other connections.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Yeah,
That would be really great.
absolutely.
A lot of the thing has to do with fear. Like we recently had a CEO retired after several years, and she was always afraid that like we didn't know how to talk to people. Like in the same way, like, you're an educator, you're a curator, you don't know how to talk to these people, you don't know how to play this game. And, you know, you're not in Rotary, you don't have that sort of connection. And that is a big it's a power struggle, like, and not, but also like I think that's a thing I've seen in other museums and other institutions where it's like we have now, we're at a point where like we have subject matter experts in several areas. Like we have a person who works with disability and accessibility. She does all the research for those grants and then applies for them. But it is something like even in like a small museum like less than we're a small organization, it's so hard to bust through. I live in Iowa where people are notoriously stubborn. I mean they're just like, you know, the music man is true. But it is kind of an interesting thing though, like especially because we have a lot of our staff are not from the area, but it's also like what we found is actually that helps because we don't have those like sort of we don't worry so much about them. We're just like we need to talk to them because we need the money.
Well, from our end, we do try, I know I try, and I know many do, with the development officers to address this with them and tell them, you know, we wanna meet the people, we wanna meet the people doing the programming and that sort of thing. And so that kind of forces them, but, you know, so that's something that's on us to kind of push, is to say, you know, we're not excluding them, come to the meeting and be a part of the whole thing. It's a team approach. You know, all of us are part of the team. And so, but we do push. And sometimes, you're right, they get a little proprietary, territorial, that, you know, well, what is it you want to know? And I'm like, well, I just want to meet the people doing the program. You know? And trying to not make it that they have to get defensive, but at the same time, just let them know that it's just what we do. You know, we do this with everybody, and you know, but it's a process. You know.
I've been literally told, listen on this call, sit in this call, but do not say a word. Well, like take notes, but don't say a word.
That's good for us.
Well, as development officers, kind of know maybe this will go.
Yeah. This is a good reminder for us, I think, to do a little more outreach.
Right,
And
to really push.
Artsman Hudson Merritt has her Meet with Merit days,
Right,
where
right.
she just makes herself accessible, to the community, and she kind of goes around the counties, and it's such a cool way, I think, for a foundation to put themselves out there and say, we're here, we're accessible, we're available. And so I thank you for saying that, because I know we could do better on our end.
And our development officer is so thrilled to not be involved in grants. Yeah, because she's doing the fundraising
Yeah.
and leaves it, I don't think she even knows what I've done. I think she only knows because every grant we get, we put out a press release. It may never get put into anything, but we always send out a press release saying, but I don't send thank you notes, and that's a good lesson to learn. I really enjoyed one of in worst practices, and I don't know who said this, they want to out themselves, trying to entertain them. And I just sort of laughed because folklorists were just sort of natural entertainers. So if someone could address, what do you mean by entertain? As a worst practice, trying to oversell. Well, and someone else said trying to wow with your product, so maybe that sort of goes along with the same thing. So I don't know who wrote.
I didn't write that, but I understand the point. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying about, and I say this with full disclosure, I know that most of you probably come from very small organizations. And during this conversation, some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to research every single foundation and corporate donor that's in my town? And I don't have the best answer for you other than to know that as overwhelming as that seems, on the giving side, the requests are so many. So focus more on what the giver is asking for. Fill out the application, fill out your grant request within the parameters that they've set out for you, because they've set those out for a reason. We all have to focus on something because the needs of our communities are great and overwhelming, and each of us have developed the parameters we have for specific reasons, so kind of to pay attention to that. So it's less about, really wowing, and it's more about the substance. I didn't answer. That was not my answer, but I completely can understand why that would be an answer for a giver.
Would it be, like in our case, would it be helpful to bring an artisan with, to meet with you so you can meet them personally? I just think that would be, that process is wonderful for you to ask them questions, and even in our own work, maybe bringing someone we work with that benefit from what we do.
Oh, absolutely. I know when we funded, the first time we funded, it was Young Audiences of Western New York, and so they have all the artists that work for them. And they wanted to do a folklorist out at a camp that we have here, Cradle Beach Camp, which has children coming that have disabilities. And I couldn't figure out really what they really wanted to do with this. And I'm thinking, well, what is he going to do? And how is he going to relate to this? And so then I did meet the artist. And I think I would have funded him twice what they asked for after I met him. He was so good. And I did. I came out and I went to where it wasn't the program yet. And I went and I sat, and there was a bunch of children and me. And I was like, and I thought, oh my God, I was so entranced. And I was like, oh yeah, they should ask me more. This guy is good. So absolutely.
I had a funder once ask us, is there anything we can do for you? And we were like, oh, never been asked that question before. You can do something for us. And as it turned out, they could. It was a hospital. So they did a bone marrow drive, which is one of the things that they do. So they did a bone marrow drive at their hospital, and then they have thousands of employees, so they have an e-newsletter to their employees, and they said, anytime you're doing a bone marrow drive in the community, let us know. We'll put it in our newsletter, to our employees. And so that's, that partnership that we look at, that, we want to be a partner. We don't want to be a grantee and a grantor. But it was a great question to say, could we do something for you?
And that's really a really interesting idea for a folk arts organization to think about, because we have access to so many communities, especially refugee communities and immigrant communities, who might not necessarily do a bone marrow, understand a bone marrow drive, but it would certainly enhance the registry to have, you know. So I sometimes it's for us sort of thinking outside that box too, is that sometimes we can do something that's for the health of the community as a way of.
Or we had a local, it was a historical society in Madison County, and they were doing an exhibit and a festival, and they got funding from a private foundation, and the private foundation, one of their areas is safety and bicycle safety, so they funded the event. They were only a small part of it, certainly you don't want to take away the integrity of your event, but they gave away bicycle helmets at the festival, and so therefore they came in as the funder. And you know, I mean, to me, that's just a win-win, because families are coming that might not have normally come to that event because their child's getting a bicycle helmet, but then they're staying and they're exposing, you know, the arts to a child that could inspire, you know, so to me, that's just a win-win, is to sort of maybe think about things a little bit differently.
So we have a few minutes left. We can either stop. We have 4 minutes left. Oh. Somebody else say thank you. So we sort of didn't get to the part where we sort of understood the breadth of our work, because we all do very different things in very different communities. But now it's good to know that we can call you and sit down and have those conversations. And I think it's like my executive director loves collaborations. So knowing that I can get help with finding a community, you know, to work with. I'm 2 years into the job, but that's still relatively new to the area, so I don't know everything. So it's good to know that I can sort of get some help and find some of those other groups that I can collaborate with, and that might help to raise, as you said, raise all boats. You know, that it can help everyone.
We may not have time for this question, and I apologize, it just came to me, but I've been in a situation where you apply for a program grant, and they will not allow any sort of administrative overhead or any kind of, is that something that's typical, that with foundations, you allow a 10% admin overhead, or you just want to go directly into the program, if it's not a capacity building? Yeah, I'm sorry.
In research, we do have a policy that we do not pay administrative overhead. In our other areas, we will look at it if it's integral in the program being a success. So we kind of try to analyze each one as it comes. But we do have a set policy in research that we do. We're small, and so we feel that universities, which tend to do the research, can handle that overhead. But that's our perspective, because we are not, we're nowhere near as big as Fauchard. So we can't do that. But I don't know if Fauchard does either.
I don't know either.
If I'm not mistaken, I don't think you do.
We have a
I
whole
think we all-
listing of what we fund and what we
Yeah.
don't fund, but
Yeah.
I was looking at it earlier, I don't
I
know.
can't remember, but I think we had a conversation with Paul once.
Yeah.
We feel that the universities can figure a way out to do that.
So if you have staff that's working on a project, you just need to make sure that they show up on the budget as opposed to
Yes.
Yes.
We do allow for like an admin percentage, you know, if it's reasonable, for most of our grant programs. But yeah, just to outline it in the budget, so we know it's there.
Something that interesting that came up yesterday was one of the women who's an artist, you know, who, because there are some individual grants, said that sometimes the word limits or the space limits aren't enough to tell her story.
Edit.
And sometimes she tries to edit, but
I don't know, I think we're guilty of it, because I know in our last application, something happened with our mission box and people did not have enough space for it.
Well, no, this last round,
I know,
just
you said
turned
that
in,
was
I'm like,
tight.
I had to, you know, I mean, mission statements are already cut to the quick, and I'm like,
And
I don't
think
know
that
what I
was-
can take out.
I think that was an error on our part when that application
It
was
was like
submitted. So
250
if
characters.
you ever find, yeah,
No,
and
not
it
words.
should have been
Yeah.
250 words,
Right.
and so I think that our staff who is creating that application made an error. So if you ever find something like that,
we're like, this is ridiculous, please call me or send an email.
That's good, you know,
Yes,
again, I think
yes.
we're so afraid of, you know.
Yeah.
Cause now
We
we're
just wanna
really
keep
cute.
it
feel that we have enough space, but occasionally we'll get a call and say,
Yeah.
you know, like, but, so we have, attachments. And I'll tell them, do something, put it into the attachments, they're just open attachments. And then, you know, the directors can access that if they want to look further, give a brochure, whatever it is that you feel you want them to see.
Alternatively, I also worry when it says 5,000 words or whatever, and I only come up with 2 words.
Oh, well, no one will, no,
No
no one will,
one's
no
gonna-
one will but go that far.
It's like, what am I leaving out?
No, you're not. That's okay.
Well, if no one else has questions, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Louise.